All right, everyone. Good morning. It is Friday. This is the morning briefing from the Celtic Way. We're underway, guys. A little bit late today, but we're there. We're always there. Uh, how are you both? How are you both getting on?
Things are good. Yeah, I was wondering if Tony was going to answer that first there or not.
We're
I'll,
both
I'll, I'll
thinking
take I'll
that.
take the lead.
You're.
I know.
I'm trying to think of a centre back partnership you're like. Who was famously? I open this up to the floor. Who was famously bad for just not having communication as a Celtic back line?
Duffy and I are probably from 2020,
Yeah.
21, or whoever was playing at that point. It was a nightmarish season. Duffy and Julian potentially, but yeah, things are good.
Who's Shane Duffy here? Who's Shane Duffy out of you two then? Who wants to claim to be Shane
I
Duffy?
don't think either of us want to claim that, unfortunately, for the way that he played for that season. But no, we're all good. Looking forward to the game tomorrow. Both Tony and I are both making our way to Perth to witness that game, Celtic versus St Johnstone at McDermott Park. So looking forward to that. Day of press conferences today. We've got plenty to discuss concerning the predicted lineups as well. So it's one of those days that takes care of itself, really. But we're looking forward to the game tomorrow and hopefully another 3 points on the board in the Scottish Premiership.
Tony?
Yep, all good. Looking forward to the game. We're just looking forward to seeing Celtic again. We're just enjoying watching this team and looking forward to seeing who the manager chooses for this one ahead of a massive game on Tuesday night. So I think there'll be some tweaks. I don't think there'll be as many as 9 changes, but you might see the likes of Luke McCowan feature and Adam Eda up front, stuff like that. So he has got some decisions to make in terms of his personnel. But the good thing is we have the players to come in. We've got strength and depth in certain areas. And your only concern is, well, 2 concerns, Johnston and Carter Vickers. But as I said earlier this week, if there are concerns about those guys, you just wrap them in cotton wool. You need them for Tuesday.
Yeah.
End of story. And if they can both make Tuesday, then I think Celtic are capable of going to Perth and getting a result. Let's put it that way. Without guys like that, if they have to.
Yeah, you'd hope so. Listen, first of all, I should have done this right off the top. I wanted to get you both involved. Huge well done to Celtic Women last night. They got over the line, more than got over the line, guys. 2-0 victory against the Ukrainian champions Vorskla Poltava. 3-0 on aggregate. Emma Lawton, Shannon McGregor scored last night. We're into the group stage, the Champions League proper, for the first time. First Scottish team as well to do it. I could have sworn Glasgow City played in it a few years ago. I need to look that up. They definitely played. I remember them playing in Europe. Maybe that was like qualifying they failed to get to. But we're there, Ryan. Some big teams as well. Lyon and Wolfsburg and Bayern Munich. And I think there's 3 English teams in there as well. Fantastic achievement. History made.
Absolutely. History makers, and well done to the ladies for getting through to the group stage, the first Scottish team to do so, as you quite rightly said. Watched a bit of the game last night. From what I was watching, Celtic were the dominant team. They played really good football. Elena Sidiku's taken the good work already done by Fran Alonso and expanded on it. So she's won the league and she's also got Celtic into the Champions League for the first time. I think that's a pretty good just under a year's work for Elena Sidiku, and long may that continue. Hopefully we can even see a couple of these Champions League games take place at Celtic Park. I'd like to see quite a big crowd at these games. I don't think it can be understated how big an achievement this is to be rubbing alongside the likes of Barcelona, the teams that you mentioned, Wolfsburg as well, these teams that are really good in the women's footballing world. So absolutely delighted for them. Well deserved. It's the great work that goes on behind the scenes at the women's team as well. So yeah, delighted for them. They've came a long way in a short couple of years, but absolutely delighted for them all, and they thoroughly deserve it after last night.
Draws today, guys. 1:00 Central European time. What time is that? Celtic Park time. 12:02, is it the other way?
I think 12 o'clock, I would suggest.
Okay. Cool.
I think so.
That should be good. What was it there? Yeah, Jerry just clarifying that Glasgow City were there when it was just knockout. So they've obviously changed the format over the past few years, and we're the first Scottish team to be in there. So the feel-good factor continues, Tony.
It's a wonderful achievement, I think you have to say, to Elena Sidiku and the girls. Take a bow. absolutely take a bow and go and rub shoulders with the best in the women's game and see where you're at. That's your barometer, isn't it? And as Ryan said there, what a year it's been for Elena Stucker, leading Celtic to the league title for the first time in their history, and then joining the men in the Champions League proper, group stages proper. You have to take your hat off to that and applaud that and say well done. And they've done it the hard way. They had to come through the qualifiers, and so now you reap the rewards of that. And you go into a tournament, people won't expect you to do much against some top flight teams, some real top notch teams that are in there in the women's game. But go and enjoy it, go and have a rip at it and see where it takes you. And good luck to them. And as Ryan said, I think they were the better team last night, weren't they? For everything that I've read, I didn't actually see it, but and that's, you can only grow and take confidence from that. And that's a major hurdle, being an obstacle being overcome by the Celtic ladies team. So well done to them, and all power to them. And just enjoy the draw, see who they get. And as Ryan said, I think a lot of Celtic supporters would like to see a couple of the games switched to Parkhead, wouldn't they? Because they've had that support of Celtic fans before, and they've thrived on it and enjoyed it. So well done. I have to say well done to them.
Yeah, huge achievement. Excited to see who they get and whether we see any games at Celtic Park. I think that certainly should happen, but as is often the case with Celtic, these things that seem to make sense maybe won't. So we'll wait and see. Gordon just saying massive congratulations, excellent achievement. He reckons they should be playing at Celtic Park if it doesn't clash with the men's team. Mark is talking about the JD interviews. Have you watched any of this, Ryan?
I've watched about a third of them. I've got up this morning and watched about a third of them. So I've listened to what Sinisalo had to say, and I've heard a little bit about what Luke McCowan had to say. They were doing it in sort of chronological order. So it was Sinisalo, Luke McCowan, Nicholas Kuhn, and Daisa Maeda, along with his interpreter as well. So they were all at JD. I think it was on Wednesday night to discuss. Right. It was like a fans Q&A session. From what I've heard from Sinisalo and that little bit of Luke McCowan, it seems like a pretty good interview. The two of them obviously are ex-teammates as well as being current teammates, because they both played at Ayr United at the same time, which was... I had to think back to that. I was like, they have actually played together before. And they were both admitting it's a small world, and they sit beside each other in the changing room as well. So they're good pals off the pitch, which can only be good for squad morale. But I think Luke McCowan, I don't know if Luke McCowan will actually be sick of talking about how it's his boyhood dream to be playing for Celtic. You can't exactly wipe the smile off of his face whenever he speaks about them. But from what I've watched so far, and it's only been about 9 or 10 minutes that I've managed to get through, it seems like a essential watching for any Celtic supporter that wants to know a little bit more. The host is very good at making the players feel comfortable, and he asks good questions towards them as well. So they all look like they're in pretty good spirits, and I'm looking forward to getting to... I'm especially looking forward to getting to Daisa Maeda's bit, because I just think he's the most interesting character in years at Celtic, and everything that he does is worth watching and worth listening to as well. So looking forward to seeing what he's got to say when his thoughts are translated by the interpreter.
So
I think Daisa Maeda's the one everybody want to hear from him, because he's just such a popular guy, and you just know at some point he's not going to take it serious, is he? He's going to say something, and all the Celtic supporters are just going to get right behind him even more. But Luke McCowan's just he is living the dream, isn't he? And just can't escape it, and can't get that smile off his face. Skin graft wouldn't get the smile from Luke McCowan's face at this minute in time. He's buzzing about it, and fair play to him. He's 26. He's did the hard yards. Guys like that, you want to succeed, and they deserve every success. So, and it is a small world. Sinisalo there as well, and Nicholas Kuhn is also riding the crest of a wave, isn't he? He's just a man in demand, and people just sort of, reshaping their opinion towards him once they knew the full backstory. And when you look into Nicholas Kuhn, he was a bit of a child prodigy as a player, so you realise why Celtic have signed him, because this guy can play. Maybe never got the opportunity at the likes of Ajax and Bayern Munich, but he's getting the opportunity here. And you heard him last week talking himself, saying the dream was always to play in the Champions League. And he told himself he would make it and he would get there. So he's got there. And he's going to go out on Tuesday on a centre stage and, big chance for County Son and say, and he's in his home country and say, I can play, I'm still around, have a look at me. You could do worse than me than, at international level, because I think that's his next dream, isn't it, to play? Because I think he's represented Germany at every under the 16, 17s, 18s, 19s, 20s level. So the next one's a call up to the full international squad. So I'm sure he'll be using it as an opportunity to say, listen, I'm right under your nose, have a look at me. So just those four players, maybe Sinazalo, with the exception of Sinazalo, but he still seems quite happy, doesn't he? When you're looking at the tape and the questions, and he's happy to be there, and maybe being told further down the line he'll get his chance. So everything's positive about Celtic at the minute, really, isn't it? It's very hard to find any negativity.
It's hard to find negativity, yes. I think it's a good point you make about Nicholas Kuhn. I'd actually forgotten that, or didn't realise that he was, German and was going to be going to these grounds. Did you guys know he played for RB Leipzig earlier in his career as well? Because I knew he'd been at like Ajax and he's at Munich as well, wasn't he? But he's actually going to be going up against a club that he came through his youth system when we play later in the tournament. So I think he's going to be ready to go. And Arnie Engels, and those two are probably the kind of real standout players over the last few weeks, maybe alongside Callum McGregor, but they're going to be, chomping at the bit for Tuesday night.
I'd say that they're the main men to look out for if you're Borussia Dortmund. Those are the two players that are going to cause Borussia Dortmund, along with Daizen Maeda, Kyogo obviously as well. But those are the two players that maybe they're familiar with as well. They might have heard of them in passing. They definitely know all about Engels because he made his debut against Borussia Dortmund about 2 or 3 years ago in a magic 4-3 game between Augsburg and Dortmund at the Signal Iduna Park, which, what a cauldron of noise to make your debut in. But apparently he acquitted himself quite well in that game, which was good to hear. Very much like how he applied himself against Rangers in his debut. He only makes his debut in these big games, these big occasions, which is probably a measure of the player as well, which is great to see. I was actually speaking to a Dortmund fan yesterday, Dortmund expert, that will be going out in the next couple of days, and he was talking about the fact that Dortmund are a wee bit of a team in transition at the moment. I think you can look at that result against Stuttgart the last time out, and they get beat 5-1, and that was even when they'd signed 2 of Stuttgart's best players last season, and in terms of the centre-back, and of course Guirassy, the striker that was the second top goal scorer in Germany last season. So shows you that they're a team in transition. Also, was a player, the manager of Borussia Dortmund was actually a player signed by Brendan Rodgers, Nuri Sahin, because he went to Liverpool for half a season. That was in his first season. He didn't really make the grade.
We'll know him quite well.
Yeah, I didn't. I thought about it in the background. There was you'll obviously know Emre Can because he signed Emre Can from Bayer Leverkusen back in the day as well. So there's a couple of familiar faces that Rodgers will be coming up against. I think that will interest him even more coming up against that, especially a player that he had. I think he got Nuri Sahin when he was on loan from Real Madrid, I believe. It wasn't a great spell for him, and he went back to Borussia Dortmund and became a bit of a club legend again there. But it'll be good for him to see a familiar face, and it'll make Rodgers feel a bit old coming up against his former players as coaches. But I would still say that Rodgers is a young coach still, even young at heart, with the way that he plays. So he'll like to measure himself against these players or these former players that have now become coaches.
Yeah, Patrick pointing out that Dortmund play tonight. They play Bochum. So that'll be one to keep an eye on. If people want to kind of find out a little bit more about our opponents on Tuesday. Right, what about tomorrow then? Because that's what we should focus on first. We'll have about 20 minutes to preview Dortmund, I'm sure, between the two matches because they're quite close together. But what about tomorrow's game? What's the thoughts? A few decisions for Brendan Rodgers to make. For me, there's a decision about who does he play up front, who does he play in midfield, but that's going to be the case for every game this season. I know you've kind of mentioned Luke McCowan there. Steve's pleased to hear that. The fact he hasn't kicked a ball since he scored against Hearts a couple of weeks ago. So Luke McCowan is someone I hadn't even considered could start tomorrow.
I think this is a game that's tailor-made for players like Luke McCowan, isn't it? If you're going to protect your bigger players, bigger players, I'm talking about protect the likes of Ankles and and others. So I would like to see Luke McCowan play, because I think the comment I said there, I think he is ready to go, and did a lot of press this week, you know what I mean? So maybe he's been told he's playing, pushed out to the front there to front up and say things. But I don't think anybody would have any qualms about Luke McCowan playing. This is a boy that they're desperate to see do well, because he's one of our own and all that. But I also think as well, he's a good footballer. People seem to he's signed for Celtic because he's a good footballer. Doesn't matter that he's came late in the day. The manager sees something in him. And Callum McGregor told him the very first day, go out and enjoy yourself. I'll be with you. I just thought that was one of the best pieces of advice ever given to a youngster. And I wrote a piece saying maybe one day Luke McCowan will be in Callum McGregor's shoes, saying it to somebody else. And I used the example of Lennon Miller was my example, just off the top of my head. But you'd like to think that in terms of continuity. And I'm trying to connect dots, as I always do, and he's been signed for a reason, Luke McCowan. Right? Not because he's Scottish and he ticks this box for the Champions League. He's signed because he's a good footballer, and Callum McGregor ain't going to last forever. And I just think maybe he's been earmarked for that. If Alistair Johnson stays for the duration, he might be earmarked for the captaincy. I don't know. There's something in me that thinks that Luke McCowan might be that man to take over from Callum McGregor, and has been told, study him, watch him, learn, because you are kind of next thing. Because Brendan Rodgers also said that for some players Celtic's the end game, for some players it isn't. I think Celtic's the end game for Luke McCowan, isn't it?
Yeah.
Another 4 or 5 years. Yeah.
It's certainly, I think we're probably the biggest club that he'll play for.
Correct. So if he comes in tomorrow, brilliant. Up front, we said it earlier on in the week, didn't we? Adam Eder for me. I don't think there's any dubiety over that. Keep Kyogo for Tuesday night. I think most people are on board with that, aren't they?
Certainly, that's how I feel. I think Kyogo's pace against Dortmund is going to be really important. I think Brendan Rodgers is going to have a go on Tuesday night. That's not to say Eder couldn't do well, but I just think that electric pace of Kyogo plus Kuhn plus Maeda could really spell danger for Dortmund. And I just think tomorrow, again, I've not seen the pitch. I know it's relatively early in the season, but I just feel like you never have a great pitch at McDiarmid Park. Even when it's a good pitch, it feels quite kind of bobbly and a little bit dry. And it just might be a day for Adam Eder tomorrow. I actually feel it's a day for Paulo Bernardo as well. I feel like he just has that bit more industry that you might need in a game like tomorrow than Rio Hatate. So I would actually start Bernardo, Engels and McGregor in my midfield tomorrow, and I would have Hatate come back in probably for Bernardo on Tuesday. I know a lot of people might think, you wouldn't start Hatate because his form hasn't been great, but I still think at Champions League level, Hatate can be a difference maker for us. So that's what I would do. Ryan, what's your thoughts?
Throwing a bit of a spanner in the works for me there, because I need to think about this a little bit. The midfield, it's all good decisions. That's the great thing. There is no detriment here whatsoever. If they throw in Luke McCowan, I'm delighted, because other teams would have earmarked Luke McCowan has been a danger man for Dundee anyway. So having him at Celtic with better players, being a set piece expert, being good outside the box, in the box, plenty of goals, assists as well for Dundee. I don't think that would be a downgrade whatsoever. Having somebody that understands the domestic league can be a weapon for Celtic, a really, really useful weapon. It could be one of the first names on the team sheet for the game against Ross County at Dingwall for me. I think that is his sort of game. Just a fight between Ross County and Celtic. I'm sure that the conditions will be okay, considering it's the end of September, start of October. But that could be a game that's earmarked for him. But I do think he'll get a lot of game time. For me, Engels will play tomorrow. I think he didn't play against, or he came off the bench against Falkirk and played 20 minutes. He will play. I think he'll be expected to play the vast majority of games. I'm to and fro with Hatate and Bernardo because I want both of them to be in the team. I like what both of them bring. They bring something different. For me, Bernardo is the first name on the team sheet against Borussia Dortmund on Tuesday for his work off the ball.
Okay.
You're gonna need to defend on Tuesday. I don't think you can have any passengers. Not calling Rio Hatate a passenger, but he doesn't have that same industry as you talk about compared to Bernardo. The Borussia Dortmund fan that I was speaking to says it's going to be a battle between the two sides. I want Bernardo front and centre, that battle in the midfield. So what does that mean for tomorrow's lineup? I still want Bernardo in that team for his industry because it's going to be a battle at McDermott Park as well. So it's a difficult one. And this is why Brendan Rodgers is getting paid the big bucks to make these decisions and to keep this squad happy. He's spoiled for riches at the moment with the amount of good midfielders he's got at the club, and there's only 3 positions that he can put them in. One of them's already spoken for because the captain plays there, and Cal McGregor. You would imagine that the other one's already spoken for because Arne Engels is the record signing and he'll play. So there's one position that 3 or 4 players are actually fighting for at this moment in time. That'll just bring out the best in this midfield, and you're going to see so many different variations, but I think each one of them will be successful for different games. In terms of the up-front scenario, I think it's got to be Adam Idah. This is a horses for courses game that Tony talks about. McDermott Park, it's got to be Adam Idah. You've got to bring some chaos up front. Got to rile up the defenders at St Johnstone. The disciplinary record recently has been fairly poor. I want a player like Adam Idah to be noising them up and getting them on bookings early doors. So for me, it's got to be Adam Idah that leads the line for Celtic.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, centre-back as well is going to be a talking point. We'll hear from Brendan Rodgers later, Tony. It's going to be interesting to hear what he has to say about Cameron Carter-Vickers. I expect him to rule Carter-Vickers out of this weekend.
I do as well, and I think you've got to go Trusty and Scales then, haven't you?
Yeah.
So just say to Trusty, okay, and you come again and get used to the kind of domestic setting. And I've no qualms about playing Trusty and Scales if Cameron Carter-Vickers is rolled out. Yeah, but as I say, I think Celtic are more than capable of getting a result against St Johnstone. They've got better players and they're a far better team. So there'll be a serious inquest if Celtic can't go to Perth and win against a team who at the minute are managerless and they're struggling. So, but they were the same last season, and Celtic drew 0-0 at Celtic Park with them, didn't they? And that game where Matt O'Reilly should have scored about 5. Yeah. So stranger things have happened. But I just think that whatever selection or starting 11 the manager puts out there, they'll be more than capable of doing a job. And you were talking about the midfield. I also think that McCowan can give you a bit of a. He can shoot from long range. He's very good, as he showed his first goal for Celtic, So I think things like that might weigh into the manager's thinking. Get a sight of goal and have a crack, and the likes of Bernardo, it wouldn't surprise me tomorrow if it's McCowan, Engels and McGregor in the midfield, and the likes of Bernardo is kept for Tuesday night. I know Ryan was saying it could be a day for industry, but also I think you need to be on the front foot as well. I think Luke McCowan can give you that too, and you talk about his set-piece prowess as well. So there are many variables to this, but I don't know, I've just got a feeling that McCowan might start tomorrow. But in terms of the back line, I've no qualms about Trusty and Scales. I say you need a bigger sample with Trusty. We were talking on Monday, weren't we, Hamish, that your only disappointment from Sunday was that you weren't raving about Trusty and Valle, right? They did okay, but you weren't raving about them when you wanted to be raving about them. But that's not criticism. That's just observing what you watched. But I've no qualms if it's Trusty. I would just take absolutely no risk with Cameron Carter-Vickers.
Yeah,
we have to have him fit for Tuesday. That bottom line. And Johnston as well. If Johnston's, Ryan was saying he expected Johnston to make it, but I don't want to take any risk with Johnston in terms of if he's not 100%, you cannot risk him, in, especially you talk about the St Johnstone surface as well. So any doubts about those two, they sit out for me, and Trusty and Ralston come in, because I still think that they're capable of helping Celtic get a result.
I think that the chat is that Johnson's maybe a little bit further on, and I'm not sure if he's been in training this week. The chat at the start of the week certainly was that he would be back in training. Again, as you say, there's an argument that you don't take any risks with Alistair Johnson. I'm just looking at that back line from last week, and the issue was we had so many kind of new faces in that back line, and it clearly caused us issues. So like I would look to kind of keep that as consistent and as possible. The defence is an interesting one because I actually, in a weird way, obviously I'd rather Carter Vickers was there, but I kind of want to see a bit more of Trusty. And if Carter Vickers is fit, that probably wouldn't have been the case because Scales is playing so well. So Trusty may have had to wait, I don't know, a few weeks maybe after the international break to play again. And I feel what he needs right now is minutes. So in a weird way, might not be the worst thing for tomorrow's game, just to see a bit more of Trusty alongside Liam Scales, because Liam Scales, all due respect to Stephen Welsh, Liam Scales is going to be a better partner, you would think, for Austin Trusty. So Dortmund's obviously a different issue, and you want Carter Vickers back for that game, and you'd be a bit concerned about that game if Carter Vickers isn't back. So it's going to be interesting. Is there anything else we kind of want to hear from Brendan Rodgers today, Ryan? What's on your mind?
And apart from injury updates, I do want to always hear about injury updates and how players are getting on, because it did sound as if Alistair Johnston was going to be fit for this game. He said it was just a back problem that he had, and that he would be probably fine for this game at the weekend. I would expect him to come back in and slot right in alongside Liam Scales in the centre-back position. I'm not saying Alistair Johnston to play centre-back, but in that defensive lineup, adding Scales and Johnston to that back four will instantly solidify things, especially Scales, because of the way that he's playing. And I think he deserves a lot of the credit that's coming his way at the moment. And I think people started to realise how important Scales has become to this team. I know Carter Vickers was missing as well, so you can talk about that absence being a difficult one for Celtic. But Scales not being there as well, because he's been there for the past year now. He's been front and centre of the Celtic backline for a solid year. He's not been able to be moved yet. He's been constantly fit. So to lose that familiarity from the midfielders would have been used to playing with Scales by now. So not having him there would have caused issues. So even having him back will be a plus going tomorrow. And it's his sort of game tomorrow. He'll enjoy that battle, the physical battle against St Johnstone tomorrow. So seeing him back there will be a plus. I did actually want to bring up a little bit of news that came out just before the briefing, and it was the Royal Antwerp CEO was talking about Balikwisha, Michel-Ange Balikwisha, the guy that was linked to the club before the transfer window shut. He got a bad injury and he's still out for Royal Antwerp at the moment, which is the reason why he's not playing. He was talking about two clubs being in for him, one being Celtic and the other being Rennes. Now, Rennes signed Jota in the last window.
Yeah.
So if there's one team going back in for this player in January, you would expect it to be Celtic. And with all the murmurings of players potentially going out on loan, you look at Palma maybe looking for an exit, maybe Yang going out. Could that be an avenue that Celtic maybe go down in January to go back in for this player if they were keen on him in the first place? It's not as if you become a bad player overnight or just one bad injury. But I think they'll be monitoring this player when he comes back with a view to maybe bringing him in for January.
So that was the one thing you would maybe look at in the summer, was we didn't sign any wingers, did we?
No, we didn't. We were close to signing Boggets that could play out on the left, but we didn't cover that position.
But remember, the manager said a couple of weeks ago that they were going to go again in January. He specifically said that. So,
and a winger is what you think of, isn't it? Because you think Palma will probably moved on.
I took it from that okay, because he was asked about bringing in Engels and the price and bringing in Trusty, and he just said and he said and we'll be looking to go again in January. So I took a lot of confidence from that they weren't finished, and so the positions that we wanted in the summer were more or less strengthened, weren't they? And then there was in other positions, because we were saying, well, we wanted a left back, we wanted a midfielder, we wanted a striker, we got them, wanted a centre back, got him. So, and then the other ones, and then we wanted a winger. So again, try to connect dots. you think to yourself, well, the manager sees that too, so that's maybe one that he has on the back burner, thinking we'll see what this guy's like when he comes back to full fitness and see if he is still the player that Celtic were interested in. So, but it fills me with real confidence. Again, I go back to it. It's very hard to be negative around Celtic at the minute, isn't it? Because the mood music is very, very good. We were talking about the confidence that the team has going to play the Champions League runners-up in Europe, which in the years gone by we would be ill-equipped for, and it would fill us with absolute dread. There's no guarantee that Celtic are going to get a positive result, but you're certainly heading there in the best shape that you could ever be in, and with a positive mindset, thinking that this team could do something. And it's been a long, long time since you've felt like that about any Celtic team in Europe. We have St Johnstone, that's the first challenge, but you're confident that whatever befalls the team on Saturday night, and it might be adversity, but they can come through it. You know that they have the personnel in abundance to come through any challenge that's thrown at them.
Do you want me to read out the comments that the guy made? So it was in Gazette van Antwerpen, which is, I guess it's a Belgian and Antwerp publication. He said, well, Balikwisha was down with an injury, so we knew it was going to be difficult to make a deal. Two clubs, Celtic and Rennes, kept negotiating to possibly still bring him in. But in the meantime, we know that such clubs will rather focus on January anyway. He must now return as soon and fit as possible, and we will see what happens. So, if Celtic are interested... Yeah, he's injured. That was the reason why Celtic didn't sign him in the first place, because I think they were actually pretty far down the line in terms of speaking to him, but he picked up that injury and then everything was dashed. I did hear quite a few things about Celtic being interested in the player. There was a bit of talk about him. We actually did a scouting report on the Celtic Way. Maybe we could get a further use out of that in January if he is linked again with the club. Bit of a second hit, which would be good. But it's not as if he's played anymore. If you were to use that, it would still be accurate because it's still the same player. He's not got anything else to base his game on because he's been injured. It's an unfortunate injury that's probably cost him a good move. But Antwerp are a team that were going through a bit of financial difficulty when I last checked. So if they're still going through that, then I think there's a deal to be made between the two clubs. And with Palma, not really setting the header alight at all and really providing a negative experience out in the left wing, to bring in somebody of that talent and that capability, a Belgian, I think he was an under-20 Belgian player, to bring in that talent would be good in January. It's good to have the first link of the January transfer window on the 27th of September. It's going to be a long few months until the transfer window opens.
It is. Any more chat for today? You guys will be back later, of course, won't you, after the press conference?
Yeah, we'll be back after Brendan Rodgers speaks. It's just Rodgers today, because Callum McGregor did the preview midweek, didn't he, when he was talking about lending support to the Celtic ladies team. So yeah, it's just Brendan, so he might speak at length because he's the only man speaking today, so I've got a feeling he will. But yeah, looking forward to what he says. Again, it's just the kind of the injury news, isn't it? I think everybody's
that's a big one.
That, so but he's always good. He's been very good value since the season started, so I don't expect him to be any less so today.
Okay, well, thanks for now, guys. You guys will be back later, as I say. Everyone, I'm sure, will tune in at that stage. You'll be busy over the weekend as well. Remember, it's a 5:45 kickoff tomorrow, everyone. So a bit of a different kickoff, but I'm sure you'll be able to... I don't know what time you guys will get home at. Or it'll be late.
I don't know, about 11 or 12 probably. But do you know what? I would prefer. I'll always say that I prefer that to an early morning game. I'm more of a night hawk anyway. Anybody that knows me personally knows I'm a night hawk. So if I've got a chance to stay up and do work at night rather than during the day, then I'll be quite happy to do so.
Okay. Well, fantastic. Hopefully Celtic get a big result, and then we can properly look forward to the big game next midweek. I'll chat to you on Monday, everyone. Have a great weekend.